Welcome back to the Wild Oklahoman channel. Today I wanted to show more detail on my hammock setup. I've kind of changed it a little bit over the last 2 or 3 years. I've been using this hammock for 3 years now, and we just finished the Ouachita Trail, 223 miles. We just finished that last week. Whenever I first started out hammock camping, I did it because laying on the ground hurts my back more than it used to. So the solution for me was sleeping in a hammock. When I started out, I watched a lot of YouTube videos of other people using hammocks and how to set them up. There's a lot steeper learning curve for a hammock to do it properly and to be lightweight and for it to be comfortable for the entire night. So I learned a lot of good information, but over the last 3 years I took a lot of that information and some of the things I like to do with it that's a little different. It helps me set it up in the way I like. So a few of the things I do will be slightly different and a little different approach, but for me it makes it quick and easy, and that way I don't have to spend a lot of time getting it set up and getting it set up right. So I'll share with you those few details that I like to do on mine. So the first part of this will be selecting my campsite where I want to set my hammock up, looking for the appropriate set of trees that are about the right size and distance apart. So I look for trees that are between 15 and 20 feet apart. That range is kind of the best range for me. Also want to look around and make sure that there's no dead trees around, widowmakers that might be a problem during the night and come down on top of you. So let's see if we can find a couple of trees here that fit that distance. I normally sort of gauge it by eye to estimate the distance, and you can also use trek poles. Like here's a couple of trees here. I've got one trek pole in my hand with my camera, but if I can take these 2 trek poles and extend them out, that'll kind of help me gauge the distance. It's usually a little further than what I can reach with the poles. But right here is a couple of trees that are probably close to what I'm looking for. Maybe these are, maybe you're on the shorter end. So like I said, 15 to 20 feet. Just by eyeballing these, they look about right. So what I'll do next is usually step it off with my feet. So I'll just do foot over foot. My feet are about a foot long each. So I'm just gonna count these off. These 2 trees actually stepped off 14 feet, which may work. 14's okay. I really don't want to get probably below 14, so I'm gonna go ahead and set up here just because the area looks clear for the most part. 2 decent trees in a decent area. So after I've identified my spot and my trees, the next thing I like to do is estimate the center point between my trees. And I'll just kind of estimate that by standing between them, and I'll mark the center point. I just put me a mark on the ground marking center, and after that I want to mark the ends of my hammock, and my hammock's 11 feet, so I'm going to mark 5.5 feet. I'm going to do that for both sides. I'll mark 5.5 feet from center. Now I know where the ends of my hammock are. I can go ahead and set up my straps. Here's my hammock. It's in a double-ended stuff sack, which makes it really nice. Got a carabiner on each end. And instead of using the tree straps that came with it, I purchased some of these mule tape straps. They take up a lot less room and they're a little bit lighter, very flexible. I usually just leave them tied up on the end of my carabiner so that they're together when I get ready to set up. So what I do, the reason these marks on the ends are helpful to me is setting up my angles. So you want your angles of your strap on your tree to be about 30 degrees. So to take out some of the calculation and guesswork, I will stand on the edge of my hammock mark and use my trek pole, or in this case, since it's a short distance, I can use my arm. So my hammock typically at the ends where the carabiner are about shoulder height. So I'll stand with my shoulder on the mark, and from my shoulder I'll extend my arm 30 degrees. So there's 0. You know, that's probably 45. So 30 degrees is about right here. I will point at the point on the tree for my 30 degrees. So about right there would be 30 degrees. So I just look at that mark and I'll put my strap on, and that'll be pretty close to 30 degrees, you know, the first time, and it keep me from having to adjust that very much. So do the same thing for the other side. Put my shoulder at the end of the hammock mark, 0 degrees, 45, come down to about 30 degrees here, and I'll put my strap. Now that I've got my straps, suspension straps on the trees at the right height that I want, now I can attach my hammock. So I'm just going to leave it in the stuff sack, stand on my mark again. I'm going to bring this out so it's about shoulder height, which is about where I connect. And at shoulder height, I used to do a Beckett hitch, but with these straps and these carabiners, I usually end up doing a Marlin spike hitch. So right here is where I've identified where I want the knot to be. So I'll pinch it there, I'll roll a loop in that, and then through that loop I'll reach in and grab a bite from the tree end of the strap. So I'm going to grab a bite from the tree end, and that creates a little slip loop, and I'm going to clip my carabiner on that, and that's going to be a Marlin spike hitch. And then from there I'll let out my hammock and I'll walk over to the other end and I'll clip the same way on the other end. So same thing on this end. I'm going to stand on my mark, on the end mark for my hammock. I'm going to put this about shoulder height. So mark about shoulder height here, and I'm going to do another Marlin spike hitch here. Roll a loop, grab a bite from the tree end, and then I'm going to hook that bite with my carabiner. If you grab the bite from this end, you'll know it right away because it won't hold, it'll just slip through. But that's not going to slip. It's easy, and then it's easy to untie. So if I need to adjust that, or when I take it loose, all I have to do is slide that off my carabiner and the knot comes loose. So if I need to readjust that, it's a really quick adjustment if I need to adjust it. So it's quick and easy. So that now that I have my suspension straps hung on the tree and I got my hammock hanging, I'm going to test it for height. I like mine a little lower than most. I want to be able to have my feet comfortably touch the ground where I can put a little bit of weight on them so it's not pinching the back of my knee here. This feels about right. I can get on the ground pretty quick and easy there, just for like sitting around if I want to eat my food or camp, just sit around camp. After checking the height, I want to kind of lay back and check this structural ridge line. If you got the proper angle set with your weight sitting in the hammock, you should be able to grab that. So the proper tension for this ridge line for me is if you grab this and kind of twist it, if you could kind of bend it a little bit, almost a 45 degree, a little bit like that, that's about right. If you can get a full 90 degrees bend into that's too loose for this, but I've got a little bit, so that's about right on this. So it's not too tight, it's not too loose, so that feels like it's good to go. This little string's actually like Amsteel, so it's extremely strong, and this ridgeline is very helpful for getting a consistent hang on your hammock. So if you get one, I would suggest getting one with this, or you can add your own, like using Amsteel or something really strong. Paracord's not recommended because it has too much stretch in it, but that is really the way to go. Also, you can hang your ridge organizer where you can keep things inside there from your pockets, you know, your charge bank, your headlamp, your phone, whatever you want to put in there. And then the ridgeline also helps hold the mosquito net up and off of you when you're sleeping, so it's not your mosquito net's not just hanging on top of you. It gives you a place to hang on to if you need to kind of pull yourself up. So definitely use a hammock that has a ridgeline. And the last piece about the hammock is, you know, if you've watched any hammock videos, you'll see this, but when you lay down in it, you want to lay down in it at an angle, so you want to be a diagonal. So put your feet over at one end and then kind of twist so that your body is over at the other end. And what that'll do is it'll allow your body to lay flat rather than kind of in a banana shape. Over the course of 8 hours, that's going to be a big deal for you. So lay diagonal and you'll lay pretty flat. Actually, like this, I can lay on my side, even could turn on my stomach if I need to, and I do that when I'm camping in this setup. So another important part of sleeping in a hammock is you need to know that they sleep very cold compared to the tent, sleeping on the ground, because you have all this air underneath you and the wind blowing underneath you, so you're losing body heat just from conduction against this, and then the air below it, that also with convection, with the air coming underneath, it's going to pull all your body heat out. And then even though you're in a sleeping bag, the part that you're laying on, you've got it compressed and flat, and at that point it's not providing any insulation for you on the bottom side. So what you need, if it's really below 60 or 70 degrees, is to put an underquilt on the hammock. So I'm using this one that's from Wise Owl. It's a cheaper option compared to some of the more expensive down ones. So this is like a synthetic down, so it compresses really small, it's really lightweight, so it fits in my backpack really nice, and it has straps on it that allow me to clip quickly and easily onto my hammock. So my hammock has these little clips on the four corners towards the head and the feet, which makes it really quick and easy for me to hang my underquilt. Underquilt has these bungee cords with adjustable toggles on them. So for me, I keep that toggle about right there, works for my setup. So right there, I'm going to clip my hammock clip onto that bungee cord there, and that'll hang. And then on the back side, I'll do the same thing. I'll clip it on that toggle, and then I'll do the same thing on that end. Now that I've got my underquilt attached to the bottom side of my hammock, I want to get in and kind of test fit this. What you want is for the underquilt to be sort of snugly against the bottom of the hammock, kind of like a taco shell. But when you lay down in it, you don't want it to push your underquilt tight and basically squeeze all your insulation flat. So you want it to fit snugly against it when you're laying down. And these ends right here, you want to make sure that the gaps are closed up so that air does not get down inside the ends. So you'll lay down and kind of look at it, and you may have to reach out both sides and kind of pull your pull your underquilt and kind of adjust it to where it's fitted. But that feels pretty good. I feel like I've got my ends closed up. Of course, I know these adjustments are good for my setup because I've used it so many times. And then as a little bit of extra, they've got these bungees in the middle here. Well, I don't have a clip in the middle of my hammock here to clip those two. So what I do is I got that ridge line up there. I just added a couple hooks, plastic hooks to this right here. I'll reach over that ridge line and I'll just hook this hook over here onto the bungee cord for the other side. And I can adjust that or whatever, but now I can adjust and that'll hold this center up. And so I'm good to go for the cooler nights right there, and that'll keep that adjusted for me. And when I need to get out, I could get out without clipping that, but I usually just reach back over and unclip this to get out. So that's it. That's a pretty quick rundown of my setup. I know I left out some of the finer details, but I kind of just wanted to do a quicker summary of how I hang this and kind of how I use it. There's a lot more information that I use from like theperfecthang.com that can kind of get you some of these precise measurements and a lot of this, but ultimately get your straps hanging at about 30 degrees from the tree. Check this ridge line tension, get that kind of right. If you get those, you're going to be okay. You know, get a height that's comfortable for you. If you do those things, you're going to be setting pretty good. Get you an underquilt, get you a hammock with a ridge line and bug net. You'll be a lot better off. Those are going to give you the most comfort and ease of this setup. Grab the stuff sack with both hands and then just start feeding the hammock into the stuff sack as you walk to the other end. And then once you get to the other end, get it all stuffed in, just hold it in and pull the drawstring. That'll cinch it up on that end. And now you can unhook it from that end. Pull your knot out. Hammock's off. Now you can just quickly retrieve your tree straps. Then on my tree straps, I usually just kind of make a coil here, lay it together, and then I'll hook that coil on my carabiner. I'll fold it over, and I'll use this remaining tail that I got just to kind of lash and wrap that together. And now, next time I reach in my backpack for my hammock, pull it out, I'll have the whole set up there in hand. I won't have to look for the straps. And that's kind of a summary of my setup. Again, everyone probably sets them up slightly different. The biggest difference on mine is just kind of finding the center point, marking the ground, marking the end points of my hammock, using my shoulders and my arm to point at the tree for a reference point to where to hang my straps. If you have any questions on my setup that maybe I didn't cover, just send something down in the comments and I'll try to answer any of those questions. Well, that's all for today, and I will see you on the next trail.